I closed the book thinking that chapter was terrible. A week later, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not because the chapter changed, because I did. And looking back now, I honestly think the worst chapter in the book became the most important one. Let me explain why. A few months ago, my younger brother and I started a book club. Every week we read one chapter and that's it. Then we talk about it. And we don't read another chapter until we finish with that conversation. I started looking forward to those conversations almost as much as the reading itself. Because I realized something. Sometimes the most important part of the book doesn't happen while you're reading it. It happens after you close it. That's exactly what happened with this chapter. It didn't change my mind while I was reading it. It changed my mind because of one conversation. And that's when I realized maybe this chapter wasn't all about breaking up. Maybe it was about learning what you need to let go of. As I was reading this chapter, I kept waiting for something that never came. The title was When to Break Up. So I expected it to go much deeper. Not just into relationships, but into everything we choose to walk away from in life. Old habits, old beliefs, old identities. The things we hold on to even when we know they're no longer good for us. But the chapter stayed focused almost entirely on romantic relationships. And for me, that felt like a missed opportunity. One of the things I really liked about the rest of the book was that so many of the ideas could apply to almost every part of life. Your friendship, your habits, your ego, the stories you tell yourself. But this chapter didn't feel that way to me. At least, not while I was reading it. The first thing that came to mind wasn't a relationship. It was addiction. Over the years, I let go of cigarettes. I'd let go of alcohol. And every time I thought I was leaving something behind, something else seemed to take its place. For me, that became food. That became sugar. That became comfort. I struggled with weight for the most of my life. And that's probably still the hardest habit I'm trying to change. That's when I realized something. Letting go isn't the hard part. Replacing it is. Because if you leave an empty space in your life, something will eventually fill it. And the question is, what do you want that something to be? That's why reading has become so important to me. Alongside with writing, meditation, and working out, I'm not just trying to quit bad habits anymore. I'm really trying to build new and better ones. Then I started thinking about people. There was one friend who was a big part of my life for many years. We'd lose touch and somehow find our way back to each other. That happened more than once, until one day it didn't. For a long time I thought we'd meet again. I thought we'd just pick up where we left off. We never did. Looking back now, I'm actually grateful. Not because I wanted to lose a friend, but because I needed to grow. I have changed. I want more peace, more reflection, more time with my family, more time to build the life I actually want to live. Sometimes people don't leave because someone did something wrong. Sometimes they're simply walking in different directions. I still wish him the very best, but I learned that letting go doesn't always mean losing someone. Sometimes it means accepting that not everyone is meant to walk with you forever. That experience taught me something else. Letting go doesn't always have to be painful. Sometimes it just requires honesty. I had conversation with people where I simply told them the truth, that my life was changing, that I needed more peace, more time with my family, more time to grow. It wasn't because they did anything wrong. It wasn't because I was angry. I just knew I couldn't keep saying yes to everything anymore. And something surprised me. Those conversations was never as difficult as I imagined them to be. Because when you're honest, people usually understand. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. I realized that disappearing is easy. Making excuses is easy. Being honest, that takes courage. And I think that's a much better way to let go. And I realized this doesn't just apply to people, it applies to work too. Over the years, I started projects. I've joined projects. I often say yes too often, taken on too much, worked until I burned myself out. And when that happened, my way of dealing with it wasn't healthy. I disappeared. I stopped replying. I avoided difficult conversation because I didn't know how to have them. Looking back, I don't think I was letting go. I think I was running away. Today, I do it a little differently. If something no longer feels right, I have the conversation. I explain where I am in life. I explain why I'm stepping away. Not because I want to end the relationship, but because I want to leave on good terms. I've learned that letting go doesn't have to damage our relationship. Sometimes being honest is the most respectful thing you can do. But there's one thing that's been harder to let go of than anything else: perfectionism. I have a bachelor's degree in music. I'm also a trained audio engineer. For years, my world was built around everything sounding perfect. Every detail mattered. Every mistake stood out. Everything had to sound perfect before anyone else could hear it. Without realizing it, I started living the rest of my life the same way. I'd wait until I felt ready. I'd wait until something felt good enough. I'd wait until it felt perfect. The problem is, perfect never arrives. And I honestly think books have helped me see that. The more I read, the more I realize that every person I admire has started as a beginner. They made mistakes. They changed their minds. They kept learning. And somewhere along the way, I stopped asking myself, is this perfect? And I started asking myself, did I learn something? I think that's one of the biggest reasons I have started this YouTube channel. Not to show people that I've figured life out, but to document what it looks like to keep growing, one book at a time. When I finished the chapter, the first thing I wrote in my notebook was, this chapter gave me nothing. At the time, I really believed that. But the more I think about it, the more I think I was wrong. Not because the chapter changed, but because I kept thinking about it. It made me ask questions I probably wouldn't have asked otherwise. What do I need to let go of? What habits are we holding back? What fears? What old stories about myself? And maybe that's why I still think about this chapter. Not because it gave me all the answers, but because it made me ask better questions. And maybe that's what a good book are really supposed to do. Not tell us how to live, but to help us see our own life a little more clearly. For me, the weakest chapter in the book became the most important one, and I never saw that coming. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.